if you love what you do but not who you do it with, it's broken. It's not going to be sustainable.
You need both.
You need both working in alignment, and then you can accomplish whatever you can think of within reason.
Welcome back to the Cannonball Mindset. And today I was trying to figure out how to do the introduction for you. And I just did one recently with Claude Silver, who you know. And like the universe spoke to me. She had posted this Twitter tweet that had like all these great attributes not about her life, basically. And so I just stole that. And then I was trying to figure out, well, how do you interview a guy that's Forbes 30 under 30, Business Insider's 40 under 40, interviewed thousands upon thousands of people from President Trump to Richard Branson. I don't know how to, like, I was like, I'm going to screw up any introduction. So I'm just going to introduce you. And throughout the rest of the show, people are going to Google you anyway, and you're going to talk and they're going to follow you. So, Dan Schawbel, who is, just amazing. Literally amazing. What's crazy is I didn't know who you were until probably, I don't know, 8 months to 10 months ago, 8 to 10 months ago. And I was sitting somewhere with somebody, and they're like, "Oh, do you follow this guy?" And I'm like, "No." And immediately, anybody ever say that to you? Do you follow this guy? And you're like,
happens all the time.
Oh shit, I got to hurry up and look him up. Well, I looked you up, and then I was like, for the next hour, I was completely unengaged in the conversation I was having, which we're going to talk about today because technology kind of took me away. But then I became obsessed with you've written 2 New York Times bestselling books. You got a new one coming out, which we're going to talk about. So why don't you give everybody a 30-second elevator pitch of who you are, and then we're going to get into the meat of the conversation. They'll understand why I'm so obsessed with you.
So my mission in life is to help my generation throughout their whole career path from student to CEO. So every decision I make, everything I work on reflects that mission. Yeah. And I want to be a great resource and dependable to them so that when they need help, for instance, right now with Back to Human, half of them have a management title and above, 5% have a director title and above. They feel isolated and alone and need some support and coaching. And I feel like I'm at a nice point in time where I can provide that value and create a support system and network for them. Yeah. So I interviewed 100 of the top young leaders at some of the best companies in the world, Facebook, Uber, Johnson & Johnson, GE, pretty much you name it. Yeah. And now I've connected them all together so that they have people that they can rely on, and they shared all of their stories with me. So for me, I can provide more value because I know what they're going through and I can help them solve their problem. And if I can help them solve the problem, these 100 people, that means I can probably help thousands or millions of people solve their problems, because at some point, everyone is kind of a leader. And if you're within an organization and if you don't have a management or a director or VP role, you're probably going to be working with them. So you got to know how to work with them. Yeah. And I have a very individual message for my book about how do you go about conducting a life where you blend personal and professional in a way that works for you. Yeah. And so the first chapter is focus on your fulfillment. And the reason why I did that is because if you aren't fulfilled, you're not gonna be able to make people around you fulfilled. So you got to nail yourself. You got to know what you're about, what you're good at, where you're headed, what your values are, because then you can convey that and get other people to support you and go along that journey with you.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that I think that is interesting is, so you're 35 years old, 35 years young, right? And you somehow seem to be able to connect in many different generations. So I think that's one of the challenges that there is now, is that you have 5 or 6 different generations in the workforce, right? 5 different generations in the workforce. 4. How do you get baby boomers to connect with millennials? You seem to be able to bridge that really well. Is that by design? Have you done, I know you're an analytical guy, done enough research to figure that out? Because it doesn't mean, I've listened to you interview somebody like Richard Branson, then I've listened to you interview somebody that's 22 years old, and it seems like you connect both on the same wavelength with both.
For me, from a corporate standpoint, I'm an advisor to corporations, yet a supporter and champion of young people trying to grow their careers within a company. And then from a overall standpoint, I think that even though I'm heavily grounded in research, my information is extremely accessible. So if you look on social media or anything I publish, there's always data. Like, I love data. I've done 45 studies, interviewed over 90,000 people in over 20 countries since 2012. So enormous investment in data, working with the largest companies. I love it. I feel like I'm an archaeologist. And when I was in my early 20s and writing career advice articles on just my blog, people would say, what do you know? You're in your early 20s. And so for me, I used research as a way to prove that I knew what I was talking about. And then in 2012, I was able to do my first study, which was actually an analysis of over 4 million millennial Facebook profiles. And then that went viral, and that helped me get my second book deal, actually. And then things have grown from a research standpoint. I just kept doubling down on data and analytics and releasing that type of information in my industry and outside my industry. So it's interesting because I'm serving kind of the world as a whole. Right. I'm also serving the business community. And then my real core niche is HR. Okay. So I'm serving all aspects. So if you see my content, some of it will be inspirational quotes that could apply to anyone in any situation. And then some of the other stuff is really focused on someone trying to build a career or how companies can best create strong workplace cultures. Yeah. And then there's more of a niche on HR. It's like, doing research studies with Oracle, for instance, on artificial intelligence in HR. And then with my company, releasing an AI for HR course, because that's the skill that they're all going to need. People and robots are going to be working side by side, and we have to figure that out now and get those skills, because the people that do will be able to ride this next wave of artificial intelligence and come up on top, right? Which requires hard skills and soft skills. The most in-demand job right now is artificial intelligence. Those are the most important skills to invest in. It used to be data science, and now artificial intelligence has taken over a little bit, right? Yeah, both command $130,000 salaries, and you end up getting a more of a managerial role where you're managing a whole team. So it's pretty prestigious, high in demand. Companies are lacking it, and overall in the economy, there's 6.9 million unfilled job openings, so we have a huge skills gap. So I'm really trying to help people uncover this gap and the disconnections we have, not just from a learning standpoint, but between each other, and bridge gaps between generations, as you said, because everyone's life will be better. And actually, I've thought about this over the past year. What I'm really trying to do, if I can improve workplace cultures and make them safer and more creative and exciting to go to every day, that's going to improve people's personal lives. We spend a third of our lives working. So if we don't get along with the people we work with and we don't extract meaning of the work we do, we're going to be disengaged and we're going to end up leaving. And it's going to, and even if we get into an argument in the workplace, that comes into our home.
Yeah, right.
If we have like a mental illness, or we get into a fight with our spouse or child or some family member, that comes into work.
Yeah, right. It always blends.
So at least I'm trying to focus on work and nailing that for people, because if you have enormous meaning and excitement at work, and you're in a place where your leader's empathetic, they're very supportive, you can trust them, and you feel like you belong, your whole life is improved.
Yeah. So there's a lot there. So let's go back to the what you said at the beginning, and this is about fulfillment. And so how do you, right now, it seems that the mindset is all about achievement right now, and the struggle is about fulfillment. How do you get the 25-year-old, 30-year-old person that's out of school, or maybe didn't even go to school, but is trying to climb that corporate ladder and listens to people like Gary Vee, who's amazing, listens to these people that say, hey, you got to put in the grind, you got to put in the work, and they mistake that for achievement without fulfillment. I'm saying you can still put in the grind, but also be fulfilled at the same time, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's the story of my life, right? I've always, in my early 20s, I put over 100 hours of work each week, but everything adds up. And the more experiences you have, the more you figure out what you want to do, but more importantly, what you don't want to do, so you can avoid those situations, those people, those jobs, and starting those companies, which I think is incredibly important. I mean, the best advice I could ever give about finding your passion and being fulfilled in life from a broader context is do as much as you can as early as in life as possible, because that helps you rule things out and start to focus more on things that excite you and that play to your strengths and that you could grow upon. Everything I've ever done has directed me into somewhere new. So I've never been like, in 10 years I want to do this. No, it's always start a blog, and then that influenced me to start a magazine, and that influenced me to write a book, and that influenced me to start a company, and that influenced me to write another book, and that influenced me to start another company, and now we have another book. So like that's all happened because one thing has led to the next organically, so it feels very natural, and it's all these decisions were made with my vision in mind. And playing to my strengths the whole time. So if you've never done a research study, how do you know if you like or dislike research? If you've never held a leadership position and managed people, how do you know if you're good at that? I know I'll never manage 100 people because I know that's not for me. And the only way to figure this out is to start to manage people. The only way to figure this out, if you can function working from home like I can, is if you're doing that. So you have to try as many things as possible, from how you're working to who you're surrounding yourself with, to different careers and jobs and even geographies where you're living. And then that gives you a sense of what you like, what you don't like, so you can start doubling and tripling down on what you like. Me, I want sustainability. I want to do this for the next 50 years, right? So when I make decisions, I have that in mind. Right? So to do another study, wow, I've done 45. What if I can get to 400 studies by the time I die? Like, you know, that's
and you already know that's a strength. You already know that's something you enjoy.
Strength.
So
you can't do 45 studies if you don't like it. You can't write thousands of articles and post 7 days a week on Instagram twice a day while commenting if you don't like it. It just does not. It's not sustainable. You can't. You can't try and live up to other people's expectations or try and be someone else, because that's not sustainable. So what ends up happening if you put pressure on yourself, if you stay true to who you are, and if you keep proceeding in the right direction, what ends up happening is that you fall into who you already are. You lean more into that, and that's where the true growth is as a leader and as a person, and that's where you can really become successful and be fulfilled, which I think is the most important thing, right? And I think it's a leader's responsibility now to get their head and heart right, because then other people, it's going to be very easy to attract a following, whether it's online, whether it's with your team. That's what you need to do, right? It's a focus on belonging, trust, purpose, and happiness. Those are the four levers for employee engagement that I talk in the book. And once those are all working together and you've created a good work environment, that's scalable. More people, recruiting is going to be much easier. Retaining is going to be much easier. People are just going to come to work pumped to be there. And if they're working from home, they'll want to pick up the phone more or do a video conference or go to an offsite. But you as a leader, you have to structure your work culture and environment to support that. And yet only 20% of companies and leaders have social events, offsites, workations, ways for employees to socialize, and that's what employees want based on the study I did with Virgin Post of over 2,000 managers and employees in 10 countries for the book.
So a couple things. So, you talked about this idea of allocation of money spent on socialization for employees. One of the things I had read in one of your articles or one of your podcasts listened to or somewhere, it might even be in one of your books, was that companies on average only spend about $500 in growth and development per employee, and they're not spending money in socialization. So you're not developing them, and you're not helping them become fulfilled. So what happens to that employee? What's happening to that employee that's not getting socialized and not getting fulfilled? What's happening to them?
So here's what's really interesting about corporations is they think very short term many times. So, let's not provide this. Let's not invest $1,000 into employees' education and upskill them, even though we have a skills gap. Let's maybe invest in artificial intelligence instead. It's a big mistake because the cost of replacing that employee is upwards of $100,000. So the one thing that's been hitting me recently is, more and more companies that I'm seeing or I'm talking to are investing a lot of money in having these big offsites, right? They'll fly in employees from everywhere. To me, that's great. Right? Because if you don't see someone, you won't have a deeper relationship with them. Like our relationship's different because I'm here rather than a text or an email. So by spending, let's say, $50,000 to fly your employees in for an offsite, a team building event, to celebrate a big success, let's say, if you don't have those connections, those employees or some of those employees are going to leave, which is going to cost you twice or 4 times as much. So the cost of $50,000 to fly all your employees in and participate in activities and celebrate and, have a big barbecue is actually pretty low compared to the cost you're going to get from having to replace those workers. And I mean, it is hiring, I have a whole chapter on it. It is hard. Yeah. It's always going to be hard. You want to hire you think you want to hire for cultural fit. For me, I'm saying personality. You want the team to also be diverse, though. Yeah. And then it could take months to hire the right person, slow to hire, quick to fire mentality, right? And it is just tough. It eats up productivity not having those people in place. And it's much better to just do the right thing, have the right people, because when they leave, and if you do the right thing and they still leave, they'll still recommend you to others, or they'll boomerang back to the company, meaning they'll come back, in a few years. Yeah. So you want to create a positive employee and candidate experience, because then people will say positive things about you and they'll do the recruiting for you. Yeah. Like, Salesforce.com, Mark Benioff was like, hey, my whole sales team, they're probably friends with people who would be great salespeople. Right. And he empowered them to share job roles on LinkedIn, and it created like hundreds of thousands of impressions and became a big pool of talent for them. Yeah, and it didn't cost him any more.
Nothing. Just by doing the right thing for the right reason, treating his people right. And
great culture, supporting people, paying people right. Everyone thinks that, everyone just wants to, get greedy and be rich. People want fair pay.
Yeah. They want to make money. Money's got to get off the table, and then money's got to be you got to meet a certain need, and then it becomes what? What's after that? So money, and once money's off the table, what's the second need of those employees?
For 22 to 35-year-olds, it goes flexibility now, healthcare coverage, and learning and development opportunities. Now, if you're talking to someone who is 40, 50, 60, healthcare coverage becomes more important, as well as retirement benefits for obvious reasons, because of life cycle. So it's not just about generation, it's about life cycle of where people are. Yeah. And, someone could have a kid today and someone might have a kid in 5 years. So maybe someone needs more flexibility now, come into work a little bit later, or, leave earlier now, but in a few years, maybe they don't need that while another employee need that. So the secret is treating people like people and adults, but also kind of customizing the experience and benefits to align with what people need when, too, and to have that type of flexibility, not just in terms of telecommuting, but in terms of other benefits that they would need at those time periods, because we're all different, even though we're all human and want to connect. So the thing that doesn't change about life, no matter how many robots take over, is that we have 24 hours in a day. We pay taxes. We're born and we die. And we all have the human need to connect. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yeah, it's safety, security, food, shelter, then love and friendships. Yeah. And if we don't get that, we'll never be self-actualized. We'll never be able to perform at our best, and if we're not able to do that, it's not good for our companies. Yeah. So what I'm saying in this book is, hey, we spend a third of our lives working. We should probably have good relationships with the people we're working with. I even say we should be friends. Yet, in the study we did, 7% of the global workforce has 0 friends at work, and half have 5 or fewer. So we lack friendships. It's actually the worst in Germany, and people actually are the most social in Brazil. So if you've been to Brazil, they're partying till 6 a.m. They're all friends with coworkers and everyone. They're having a great time. In America, it's about 7%, and I think that it's a huge missed opportunity, because again, if you have friends or close friends at work, you're going to be more loyal, you're going to be more productive, you're going to be happier and fulfilled, because at the end of the day, true happiness is the relationships you have. It's not, how many blog posts you publish or, how many Forbes lists you're on. What's really important is the people you surround yourself with. Yeah. And it takes time to find the right people, but I think that if you have a positive attitude, I think if you're a leader who is very empathetic and accommodating for people, and I think if you let people be themselves, because people want to bring their full self into the workplace and you have to, support that, then you're going to have a very healthy work environment where naturally people will want to throw birthday parties for the rest of for teammates. They'll naturally want to do it. It's not going to be forced. They'll just want to do it. And that's the environment you want. And after studying workplace cultures for 12 years, my conclusion is the best ones are the ones where it feels like a family. Yeah. If you feel like you belong to a family and people are there to support you, you're more likely to work longer. You're more likely to recommend your company to a friend. Your company will probably be more profitable as a result of that. So everything is connected.
Yeah.
And so happy workers mean happy customers. It means more profit. And again, there's a cost of not treating people well.
Yeah, one of the things I talk about a lot is that the best cultures are loyalty to peers. Most people think it's loyalty to company, the loyalty to managers, which are all important, but it's really loyalty to peers, right? And that's basically what you're saying is, I look at the New England Patriots. I'm not a Patriots fan, but New England Patriots, and it seems like the players are more loyal to each other than they are to anything else. And so you don't see a lot of the antics or the sideline fighting or any of that. They seem, and again, we see the outside, maybe not the inside, but do you find that to be true? That it's really, that's how you build it, and that's what you're talking about in this book, is how to be loyal towards each other.
And loyalty is built on trust. And the best way to instill trust with anyone, a coworker or a friend, is to be completely honest with what's actually happening.
Nice.
And I think that the real secret is to tell someone something that is unexpected.
Yeah.
Because then trust is created immediately, because the people aren't expecting it, and they're like, oh, wow, John or Mary shared this thing with me.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to share something with them.
Yeah,
so if you're vulnerable as a leader, people are more likely to open up because you've created a safe space where you are a role model to them.
Yeah, I love that. I wrote an article, Misconceptions of Trust, and I said the number one way to build trust is by being vulnerable. And most people think the opposite. They think, well, I'll be vulnerable after I trust you. But it's not really vulnerability if I already trust you.
Vulnerability drops people's guards and lets people in a profound way. The second I opened up about my anxiety on Instagram, you could tell everyone's like, oh, that's me too. Because everyone at least is anxious. Not everyone suffers from a mental illness of anxiety.
Yeah.
So everyone can connect at some level to it. Yeah. Some people more so than others. But once you do that, then people understand where you're coming from. And what's really important and what's hard to convey through technology is mutual understanding. So here's what's really fascinating about the book is I found through the study that the number one thing that gets in the way of face-to-face communication is email. Yet a study in the Harvard Business Review found that one face-to-face conversation is more successful than 34 emails back and forth.
Wow.
So instead of going back and forth, hoping that someone understands what you're trying to convey and to follow maybe a certain instructions, all you have to do is pick up the phone, a video conference, walk 2 feet to their office, and actually tell them what you want. But I think in certain situations, technology can be more effective. So let's say your meeting starts in 2 minutes. Texting your coworker to remind them that the meeting starts soon is appropriate.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Nice.
But once you're in that meeting, you need to be attentive. And what's really fascinating that I've noticed as I was writing the book over the past few years is that you can be around everyone and no one at the same time. Whether you're in the subway, whether you're walking the streets, whether you're in a team meeting, regardless of location, especially in major cities, people can be physically there, but not mentally, emotionally, or spiritually.
Yeah, right.
And it's because people have isolated themselves, because they default to looking at a device instead of a person.
Why is that?
I think it's because of addiction to technology and convenience. It's very convenient to just hold up your device and look at it. And I think it's because all those technology companies like Google and Facebook and Apple, they design the technology to get you addicted to it because that's their business model.
All right.
And so, every time we get an alert on our phone, it releases dopamine, which is our reward system, and we keep wanting more and more alerts.
Yeah, right.
So, like, a lot of my friends, especially, and me included, like, we've shut alerts off because it drives you crazy to get alerts, and it can be very distracting.
Yeah.
And eliminate your ability to think straight. So it hurts creativity and thought that you need. And I think I posted this on Instagram actually. I think thoughtfulness is the new genius. And nice. And it's I'm only saying that because I'm self-reflecting. I'm like, what really makes me feel special in that I'm establishing, good communication and relationships? It's because I put so much thought. We were talking about how like you always give books to people, but you put thought into what they would want to read.
Yeah.
That is thoughtfulness at work. That is true genius, right? Like anytime I'm headed into a situation or I need to plan an activity or I'm going somewhere, I put thought into everything. and that really matters, especially if people appreciate it. But if you're a leader within a company, putting thought into individual needs, I think is so important. I mean, there was a whole thing that went viral last year about how an employee needed a mental health day off, and the manager was accepting of that. And that was big because mental health is massive right now.
Right.
But 85% of workers think that there's a stigma behind it. And in the UK, fewer than 5% of people are willing to go to HR about mental health issues. We are, first off, I think this is big, right? Like Prince William has a whole website about mental health in the workplace that he just released, which is a big deal, right? And then you have like a Mariah Carey who's come out as bipolar. You have Ryan Reynolds, who's come out as suffering from anxiety. This is a big thing to have celebrities come out about mental health issues. It's especially important at work because it's not like you walk into work and your mental health issue disappears. It's coming with you.
Right.
And so we now, especially in today's society where people are more open, people are more conscious about what's going on, have to open up and be understanding of them as long as this individual is accomplishing their work. Work at this point in our lives in the 21st century, in the year 20, almost 19, it's the work you do and who you do it with. It's less about what company you work for, where it's located. It's work you do, who you do it with. And both of those have to work. They both have to make you feel fulfilled. And if they don't, if you love what you do but not who you do it with, it's broken. It's not going to be sustainable. You need both working in alignment. And then you can accomplish whatever you can think of within reason.
So how do you educate thousands of leaders, millions of leaders that are in leadership roles now that are going to start facing situations of mental health coming out? People are going to be, as you said, celebrities start talking about it. It's front and center, and I think it should be. How do you educate somebody to deal with that? I think that, if you've been a leader for years and you've never had to deal with this, or there was a stigma so people didn't come forward, what's the knowledge they need to go from unconsciously incompetent to consciously competent on how to deal with issues like that?
Yeah, well, if you suffer from a mental illness and you can see signs of other people, it's not like you have to point it out to them, but you can be more vulnerable. That's one thing. Number two is pick up your phone. This is how to use technology in a good way. Pick up your phone and start Googling mental illnesses, right? To just learn about them or watch a video. So that's technology used properly, right? And I think third is if somebody is suffering and you can see it, or if they come to you, meet them where they are, understand what they're going through, empathize with their situation, and if they need time off, figure out what those needs are, and then best serve them. Because if you can serve your people, they will serve you and the organization as a whole. Like everyone wins when that happens. And again, in the back of your head, as long as we're accomplishing the work, as long as we're getting along, we're moving in the right direction. Like we need a little give and take, because if we expect workers to do work outside of the office, they should be able to do personal things and handle personal matters in the office. At the end of the 9-to-5 workday, the average work week is 47 hours a week for a full-time permanent employee. Not having your phone is the new vacation, right? We're always kind of on call. And because of that, there needs to be some give, because there is a lot of take. And what we found, we did a whole study with Kronos that blew up about workplace burnout. People working long hours, not getting paid more for those long hours. They're getting burned out. And half of all attrition within a company is due to burnout. So again, it costs you more if you burn your workers out. So it's much better to understand their personal needs. Like in the book, I talk about, general needs, but like really figure out what the personal needs are, because everyone's definition of fulfillment is different. And so you figure out, take time to learn about them, what their needs are, and then figure out if you're able to provide them needs or it's the right corporate culture. And a lot of that stuff should be done during an interview. So the best retention strategy is the best recruiting strategy. You get the right people in, the probability of success is pretty high. You get someone in who has a positive attitude. I got my first job when I graduated because I was hardcore trying to get that job. Like I would not take no for an answer in a way. Like I did 15 interviews for 3 positions, got rejected twice. I just went for it. Like I was 100% on board. And it's the story of my life of always going for it. And so I think that look for those type of people. Look for the effort. Look for the positivity. Hire for personality, train for skill is what I say in that chapter, because there's nothing like a person who has a positive attitude, who's willing to work really hard, because they'll pick up the skills. They'll figure it out. And that it connects to them figuring it out, connects to the chapter on shared learning. Chapter 3 is practice shared learning. Yeah. So this chapter is big because I think that people are used to learning in isolation, and a lot of leaders over many, many decades have always hoarded information in order to gain power and influence. Yet, as we both know, the number one way to gain power and influence in society is to give it all away. Give it all away. And especially in today's world, the average relevancy of a learned skill is only 5 years. So in order to keep up with the speed of business, we have to rely on each other, support each other's education so that we're able to stay relevant longer. And that's going to be good for everyone, the team, the individual, the organization as a whole. So we're in this together.
You're right.
And things are moving so fast. Honestly, I don't even have to I'm a cord cutter. I don't have TV anymore. You know how I learn about the biggest things in society? The information comes to me through other people. The most important information finds its way to you now.
Yeah.
Right? But in order for that to happen, in order to have the right filters, you have to have a diverse friend set. I have friends who can barely pay their month's rent, and I have friends who will never have to worry about that. Right. So having diversity, not just in terms of income, ethnic backgrounds, gender, just all types of diversity in an organization, outside the organization, very important, right?
Yeah.
Make sure they have a positive personality. They're, friendly. They're likable. They're, curious. They're, always positive and uplifting. People have downtime, times when things aren't going well, but make sure those key characteristics and abilities are there. The social skills. And then everything else can be learned, and other people will want to teach them skills, right? In Google, they have the G2G program where employees actually teach other employees skills.
Yeah, it's like Montessori, like modern day Montessori, right?
Yes. And actually, going back to what we were talking about with empathy, PwC in the UK, people wear ribbons to signify that it's safe to talk about mental health. Really? So it's starting to happen. It's a little early, but I see we're definitely heading toward this great transition, which I think will be very positive. But I think it's hard to be very empathetic through texting or email. I think those conversations are meant for in person or over the phone. And so really the goal and what I'm trying to say is technology has really created this illusion that we're hyper-connected, that we have a lot of friends, Facebook friends, when in reality, these relationships are typically weaker and they make us less engaged, less committed to our teams as a result. So I'll give you a really cool study. There was a study, they analyzed this, and they found that someone with an average of 150 Facebook friends only has 3 that they can rely on at a time of emotional crisis. So we think we have a lot of friends, yet if you're in the hospital, how many people are actually going to visit you or call you? And it's actually a very small number. So technology has tricked us into believing that maybe we're right because we might only follow certain sources that confirm our beliefs. Technology has tricked us to making us think that we have a lot of friends when we have fewer. And I think technology has made us feel like we're famous or micro-famous or we're doing great. Yeah. But in reality, we end up comparing ourselves to others. We have FOMO. Yeah. And because we want instant gratification, many times we're not getting it, and it makes us feel upset. Like, for instance, I have a Jewish mom. If she texts me and I take too long to respond, she thinks I'm dead. So, that's the society we live in. And so while we can talk about generations, it's everyone. Yeah. It really is everyone. Maybe it's more for teenagers now. So there was a recent study that came out that was really big about how people choose to communicate. And teenagers are the first age group that would rather text than have a face-to-face conversation. Yeah, the first one ever. So Gen Zs, Millennials, Gen X, Boomer, Silent Generation was always face-to-face over anything else. So this is the first generation that does texting. And so what does that do when they enter the workplace? What does that do when they become leaders? So I'm trying to get ahead of this now because I see where it's going.
So a couple of things there. So one, you're not trying to I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's going to be very hard to stop the train. This is what's going to happen, right? So it's learning to live with this rather than say, hey, this is a fad, this is going to stop. This is my daughters who are 14 are growing up in an environment where, yes, they would much rather text than have a face-to-face. But that's the way it's going to be. You're trying to teach them how to do it with what we have.
Correct. How to coexist with technology and use technology as a bridge to human connection, not a barrier. Let it get you to that meeting. Let it get you to the social event. Let it get you on a conference call. But when you're on the conference call, when you're in that meeting, be attentive and present.
Don't replace it.
Exactly. Don't replace it. Let it get you there, though. I think it can be incredibly effective. I mean, look at chatbots. There are now chatbots where the chatbot organizes meetings for you and connects to Outlook or your Google Calendar and puts it on your calendar. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Right. But once you're there, be there. The other thing is the book cover. It has a name tag on it.
Yeah,
and
I
so
love it. Great book cover.
Thank you. The key with the name tag is it's a reminder that despite all the technology around us, despite this addiction that we have to it, we're still human.
Yeah.
And we have to behave like that. And there was a great quote by a policy guy in Singapore that says, if you act like a robot, you'll be replaced by a robot.
Nice.
To me, that summarizes a lot of it, right? It's like, let's start being more human and less machine. And by doing that, other people will be able to relate and connect with us, which creates, jobs. It creates career advancement. It creates a happy life, right? And that's what we actually want. So let's not get away from what makes us happy. Let's use the technology to help facilitate that. And I know this because early in my career, a lot of my early connections were built online on various communities that don't exist anymore. But, it was very helpful to connect with people like me who shared similar interests. Yeah. But it wasn't my real relationships were not formed until later life when I was like, oh my God, I know all these people. Why don't I meet them in person? And then things got much, much better for me.
Yeah. And listen, your relationships are I'm saying you have a relationship with Lewis Howes, you have a relationship with Jay Shetty, you have a relationship with Gary Vaynerchuk. So those relationships, I'm assuming, like you said, took a while to mature.
Yeah. I mean, most of them I built before you even knew who they were.
Yeah.
Because we were all starting around the same time, 2006, 2007. And I'm very good at finding talent and investing in them. And you can feel, like, if you see how I behave online, you can feel it.
Well, it's very authentic.
Yeah.
It's very authentic.
Because I really believe in them, right?
Yeah.
Like I know them when no one knew them.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's great because you feel like you're on the journey together with them.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've been a participant and an observer at the same time. And I also think about how I operate as a person. Like, I've been very front facing, no question.
Yeah.
But also I've been doing things behind the scenes. And I like both. I do like doing both. It's fun for me because I'm very analytical, yet I'm all about communication, storytelling. So that mix and match, it just feels right. For me, and I just want to be able to do this forever. And so the challenge in doing something forever is remaining relevant. And to me, I think to solve that, I just figure out what's working and keep leaning into what's working, because then I'll be able to maximize that opportunities and then be able to transition to something new when it makes sense.
Yeah.
Instead of I think the whole idea of having 10-year, 20-year goals just doesn't even make sense. I did when I was in my early 20s. I'm like, I want to, start a nonprofit. I got a whole list of things to do. I wanted to write 5 books in my 20s. Like, I was nuts. And then I just realized over time that it actually doesn't make sense to do that.
Yeah, just write 2 New York Times best-selling books like you did. Now, soon to be a 3rd.
But I think the point is, if I did too many books, I think it would limit the potential of each book. Because if you're not focused on one book and you're like thinking about the next book, you're dividing your time.
You're cheating that book that you're on right there.
And I think that's with big companies that you start. I think it's with jobs. I think being focused is important. But I also think that you should, place a few bets, like test things out, right? Like, with my 5 questions with Dan Schawbel, I just launched it a few months ago. Like, I'm seeing where that goes. I like it. It's in a format that feels authentic to me. I'm very quick, but I ask thoughtful questions. And
again, you're starting with Tony Hawk and Richard Branson, and you got right out the gate. It's pretty awesome.
I also, with everything I've ever done, it started with nothing.
Yeah.
The blog had 0 comments, 0 readers, no traffic.
Yeah.
The magazine that I started many years ago had nothing either. Like, all this stuff started with nothing. I started with no research studies. And in fact, the way I've broken into every company and project that I've ever done was to do it for nothing until I created enough value in the market where I could actually charge. And by doing nothing, by even doing TV, doing local TV shows first, it made me not fail when the Today Show called, right? Like, this book will do well because I had 10 years to figure out publishing and who to contact, what to do, what to test. And I'm still learning, of course. I always want to learn and share what I know. And I think that's important, being a shared learner. But I think that even if something seems small and insignificant, it's a stepping stone. Yeah. It's gaining experience. There's no replacing experience, and that experience enables you to take on bigger things down the road. And so even though, like, when I was younger, I was like, oh my God, I want to do all of this stuff. I want to appear on national TV. I want a massive book. I want all these things. Yeah. I'm happy that it took time. Yeah. Because I needed that time. First, I spoke to 6,000 people this year. I threw up the night before. I spoke to 30, high school students during my sophomore year. Like, big transition, but it's 170 speeches later.
Yeah, right.
So, like, get small steps before big leaps is what I say. Like, don't be upset that you have to be on a smaller stage or write a shorter book or write an article for some source that you've never heard of or other people haven't heard of before, because everything is helping refine your writing style. It's refining how you storytell. It's getting you more comfortable on stage. It's making you a better writer and reader. It all adds up. It all adds up, and I'm very thankful that it's been a long road because it's given me enough breathing room to fall into who I am.
Yeah, I love that. You talked about one of your greatest epiphanies or greatest learning lessons in your life is when you had to make 1,000 cold calls. 1,000 cold calls.
Yeah, my high school internship.
And failed miserably.
0 for 1,000.
0 for 1,000. And literally you speak about that. You write about that with such gratitude as such a profound moment.
In the moment, I hated it. Yeah. Right? In the moment, because you don't know what lesson that's going to teach you in the moment. You're in the I'm sitting next to, people in customer service, taking calls, taking 100 cigarette breaks a day, like miserable. And I was selling something I didn't believe in. I was phone auditing. I still don't even know what the heck that is. and so I learned what I didn't want to do. And you learn a lot about yourself. And I think that's the most important thing. When I interview people, I'm starting to ask them a lot more, what did you learn about yourself from your travels or from some experience that you went through? Because, like, there's so many life lessons in experience. And so for me, it's like I can learn so much from traveling to Japan and understanding that culture. I could learn from, talking to someone new I haven't met before. And so just being open to those people, opportunities, places, jobs, careers can really, really help you for the rest of your life. Yeah. Because, and here's the thing too, it's unbelievable. Like decisions I made when I was 22 will help me till I'm 92, hopefully. But that's the idea. It's like, I was always smart about capturing video footage when I spoke in my early 20s, like getting testimonials. Like 8 pages of speaking testimonials that I built up for over a decade. Like I always was thinking, how can I leverage this opportunity as marketing for the future? And so I built up a huge catalog of interviews and videos and audio interviews and pictures of me at different events and with different people. And I'll always have that. So like, it's so crazy. Like, even this interview right now, maybe this clip becomes something in 40 years from now. You just don't know how it's going to pan out. Know.
But everything's something.
And everything can be leveraged, and anything can be used as content in today's world. I think that's what my biggest lesson this year is, oh my God, everything is content. And you should always start off, if you can and if you're comfortable, doing video first. And interviewing people through video is a different skill than interviewing people on the phone, in my opinion.
Yeah, how is that?
Because on the phone, it's a little bit more relaxed. Maybe you have the questions out in front. Like, this is much more casual. You have to be on. There's more emotions expressed, a different level of connection. It's different.
Yeah, definitely have to be present.
It feels like a different skill set and a different experience than my quadrillion phone call interviews, right? Yeah. And I think that's exciting. I'm pushing myself outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And that's where the real career and personal growth happens.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the idea with the whole podcast, I get asked a lot. My wife I literally just had this conversation with my wife last night. She said, where are you going tomorrow? I said, I'm going to New York. And she said, is it for your, I have a training company, which pays the bills, and I have a podcast, which costs money. And she said, can you explain this to me? And she said, why don't you just do this over the phone? I'm like, I'm going to meet with Dan Schawbel. I'm not doing it over the phone. I could say, hey, let's video chat this, but then you lose this human connection. So the investment that we make, to me, is for this human connection. So the mindset being exactly what you're talking about in the idea of, one is good, like it achieves a purpose. Two, gives you much more fulfillment. This conversation, sitting with a thought leader like yourself that's written New York Times bestsellers, that just your tweets alone I find very mesmerized is not the right word. I get really engulfed in them. Like you talked about your book cover. When I saw your book cover, I started thinking, immediately my mind went to, I don't know why, I wasn't alive, but 1950 at a mixer, like a meet and greet or something, where everybody had to get those name tags that's on the cover and handwrite their names. And that's how you interacted, right? Oh, you're Bob. They didn't have any of the social media.
Old school is the new school.
Old school is
like if you write a hiring manager a handwritten note, like that's going to count for a lot because no one does that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's so all of that to me is just that makes sense. This connection makes sense. So one of the things that you talk about in on one of your talks, and I forget which one it was that your ability to promote. In the book, you talk about self-promotion, right? What is there? Why is there? Or do you think it's changing the stigma around self-promotion? Is it okay to self-promote? And if so, what are the guidelines or boundaries in which somebody should follow?
Yeah, I talked about this in the last book. So my last book was called Promote Yourself. Yeah. But really, Promote Yourself was not just marketing and promoting yourself within a company. Yeah. It was the art of pushing yourself forward, being accountable, going for your career, designing your own career within your company. Yeah. Right? Promotion. Right. For me, promotion gets a bad name because it's very individual. Whereas corporations are all about promoting teams and teamwork and not stealing credit. Yet I think when you promote, you need to be authentic. You're just promoting the skills and what you know so you can better share that with your team. Yeah. So I think self-promotion is good as long as it's in service of others, providing value and with the intent to share your knowledge, not to hoard onto it and take it just for yourself, because then you become more valuable. I created the first social media position, or one of them ever, within a Fortune 200 company back in 2007. And I went from a worker who would come in every single day and being like, oh, what do I need to do? I mean, I was a little more aggressive than that, but what do I need to do, to someone who's like, Dan, we need you to work on this project, being a social media person for over 40,000 employees. Yeah. So now they came after me for my knowledge and my skill, and I just would go to a different office every day trying to train and support people, because this is the early days of social media. No one really knew it. Yeah. And I was doing social media for the events we were doing. I was doing social media for different divisions. I was doing it for different departments, HR and PR and marketing. And I like doing it, right? And I think what that told me is the art of self-promotion through, in this case, it was a Fast Company article profiling me and my work with personal branding, helped me because it allowed me to distribute myself and my skills throughout the company and allow everyone else in the company to become more relevant in their job, which helped their teams and help the company as a whole.
Yeah. So you're saying if I help grow other people, that alone, that skill in itself,
it's hard to help people if they don't know you exist.
You're right.
So through the self-promotion, people knew I existed for the right reason at the right time. And I was open to sharing that knowledge with everyone else. Yeah. If you're not open to sharing it, then self-promotion is looked on as bad, because then it's just all about you.
Correct.
And even though I grew up as an only child, I quickly learned that, if I was to build a strong career and have a fulfilling life, I needed to bring other people with me. Yeah. So that's why, you'll see in some of the projects that I do, I'll collaborate with friends, people I admire, people I get along with. We have shaded values. Actually, what's really interesting that I've been thinking about recently is that I purposely try and be friends with people who have the same values as me, but come from different backgrounds. Because if you have the same values, I can connect with you on an emotional human level. But if you come from a different background, that challenges me, which is where I learn the most.
Yeah, that's fantastic. One of the things that I would love to know is if somebody were to start, somebody that's listening to this right now, if they weren't following you, they're Googling you, they're looking you up, they're starting to follow you right now. And they'll see, and you talked about it a little bit, but they'll see all this excitement, all this articles, all this success. But they don't see, and I ask this a lot of the guests that come on, but they don't see all of the shit that goes along with it, right? So in your climb to write two New York Times bestsellers, third on the way, in your climb to have, hundreds of thousands of followers and interview all these people, have a great podcast, what's been the most difficult thing that you've had to deal with in trying to better yourself and trying to achieve more and be more fulfilled? What's the struggles? Because people see the success, but for them, and I don't think it is for anybody, there's not success without a lot of struggle. What's the struggle?
I think the thing that keeps me most grounded is that I'll feel in my early 20s like I felt unstoppable at points. I developed an ego. I had extreme highs because I was really on social media and things were taking off. Yeah. And then just a few things have crashed. Like my company wasn't doing well. Every book has been rejected by every publisher besides one, even though they're successful. So over time, I've leveled out because I've had enough highs and lows where I've found an equilibrium. And even if I'm struggling sometimes, even if I, go through a few days of, depression and suffering and pain, I have now figured out how to get out of it. And how I get out of it is small wins. Small wins is what has really helped me because if you just get an article published, that's a small win. Yeah. If you give one speech to 30 people, that's a small win. Small wins helps you dig yourself out of ditches. And for me, all of those small wins together enabled me to keep going and keep going and keep going. And I've only learned that small wins are important because it's worked for me. Yeah. So if something works for me, I just keep doing it until it doesn't work anymore. Yeah. And I think that everyone goes through tough times. For me, it's been a lot of work. I mean, no joke, over 100 hours a week in my 20s. But I really believed in myself, and I had to believe in myself more than anyone else would believe in me. In fact, I was made fun of by my friends. I was, cyberbullied. I suffered from all of that, but I just knew it, and there's nothing that would have changed my mind. Clearly, nothing changed my mind. Yeah. And what's telling to me, the best feedback is my behavior. So if you're seeing me invest a lot in something, it tells you over a long period of time, it tells you that this feels right to me. Yeah. I was pretty late with Instagram, I would say, for example. But once I figured out what worked for me, it's every single day, 7 days a week. It's easier to commit to because it feels right for me, the way I'm using it. And sometimes I'm very early into things like blogging. Sometimes I could be later. But either way, what needs to be consistent is it has to feel right for me. This has to be me putting my best stuff out in the way that I see it. And has to be genuine and authentic. It's all me. I've had points where I'm doing 3 studies at the same time. And I'm a research team of 1. So I'm like, it is not easy. Yeah. And it's those times that I push through that just remind me, hey, you love research. There's no way you would do it if you didn't love it. It's just it's not possible anymore. It's too hard to do, right? And so I have a natural curiosity now, right? Yeah. Because if I've been able to do all this, what does the next 20 years look like? I'm not really sure, right? Yeah, right. And so because I'm not sure, yet I know who I am and what I'm capable of, I have curiosity to move forward, not just because I want to do the right thing, but because I'm curious. I don't even know where this could lead or what could happen. You don't know whose hand your book could fall into. You just don't know some of that information. Yeah. And so the only way for those opportunities to happen is if you push out as much as you can over a long period of time. And if it's meant to be, if it's not, that's fine. I think it was this past year where I came to grips and said, oh my God, like I've done a lot.
Yeah, right.
It took me that many years because I was just, what's the next thing? I fall in that trap of what's the next thing, what's the next thing, what's the next thing. And a lot of that times it can be driven by other people's expectations of you. You know, like I would be, for my last book, I did a book signing and someone came up to me and was like, oh, so what's your next book? I'm like, oh my gosh, if this person understood what it's like to get a book done, they wouldn't have asked that.
Yeah.
So for me, I've eliminated all of that. I am patient, maybe 2 books a decade, you know, not looking to start multiple companies right now. So I'm just trying to maximize what I currently have and then see where that leads me next based on interests, customers, passion, teammates, all of that combined. I just want everything to feel organic because then it's a much easier transition psychologically into the next thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the idea and the quote, small wins dig you out of big ditches. I think that's just because I think there's a lot. I ran the Chicago Marathon on Sunday.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Yeah. And on Saturday night, I was in Chicago. I was at the hotel with my wife and I got my first that I know of, my first hate email. Like literally somebody sent me like this horrible email. An email I would never even think was about ego, and somehow they found a picture of my house online I posted on Facebook or something, and they said all you care about is your big house, and it literally tore me down. This is maybe 10 hours before I'm going to run the marathon, and it floored me. I was like, my wife's like, you got to snap out of it. You have to run tomorrow, and you can't let this affect you. And it's amazing how people can try when you are trying to better yourself or trying to grow yourself. And this is me trying to grow myself, and how they will try to pull you back down for no apparent reason except for they're in a bad place.
That's exactly what's happening. People project pain.
Yeah. And it's amazing.
And you have to learn to block it out. And it's hard, but you have to do it because you don't want other people's expectations of you to derail you from the path that you've set for yourself.
Yeah. And I think that's what happens a lot of times. I see it with my kids. I see it with people that they have this idea of wanting to have this growth mindset and use this growth mindset to achieve more, but they allow the pain of others to derail them, and they get stuck in that moment.
Yeah. I think the other important thing to note is that people view successful people as having everything figured out. I'm still figuring things out, and everyone would agree, whether they want to admit it or not. We're all figuring things out, no matter how confident and successful someone is.
Yeah.
They don't have all the answers. And I think it's important to realize you don't have all the answers, and to open up and to learn from other people. Really, if you really examine what I've done, I'm like the question asker in chief. Right, I've asked thousands of questions, and that's how I've learned. And I've asked them through conversations, through my surveys, through everything I've done. It's always been about asking questions. So, and then listening. And I think listening is really important too, because it's very easy to cut people off if you have a lot to say, right? Mm-hmm. But for me, it's always about listening, because then my response is going to be more thoughtful. Going back to what I was saying, thoughtfulness is the new genius. Is the only way to really connect and respect other people, is not to look at your phone during an interview or a board meeting. It's to let someone else talk and then respond with something thoughtful, because you've taken time to think about what's going through their mind, you've empathized with them, and maybe you have something cool to say. It's like in a meeting, if everyone speaks and you don't, people are going to be more interested in what you have to say. And you'll have a lot more to say. Because you've already analyzed everything that's going on in the room. And for me, I'm very analytical, so I'd really pay attention to what everyone says, and I come up with something that maybe is good for everyone.
Yeah, I love that. You talked about, I want to take a right turn here, and you talked about two of the most influential people in your life are your father and your grandfather. Obviously, a father's figure or a grandfather's figure, I can understand why. But what did they teach you? What are the biggest things you learned from them that put him on that pedestal of most influential? Yeah,
so I would say my parents, not just my father. Otherwise, my mom will be very upset.
She'll come find me.
So they made a few massive decisions in my life. The first one was to hold me back in kindergarten. That was probably the biggest decision ever made on my behalf, because I wasn't ready. I wasn't mature enough to go into first grade. And because they held me back, it allowed me to catch up with everyone else. So I was bullied a little bit less because of that. So that was really powerful. Second thing was they told me not to quit my job too quickly. They basically said patience. And so it took me 3.5 years while moonlighting to finally quit my job and just do my business and the book and speaking full time. And so that was another really good one. The reason why I dedicated the first book, Me 2.0, to my grandfather is because he was a big driver for me, because every time I was on the phone with him, he was always concerned about what I was doing.
Yeah.
And when someone's concerned what you're doing when you're a little kid, you're like, oh my God, the next phone call, I had better say something smart. I better say that I've done something.
Yeah, right.
And so, it was just really powerful. Like my first book came out, he got to hold it, and then he died a few months later. So he got to see it.
So what's that?
And then the other powerful thing that connects to kindergarten is I always got in trouble, right? I was in trouble every single day of kindergarten. The bench was pretty much named after me. It was me, the principal, and her 3-legged goat back in Newton, Massachusetts. And it's just funny because I was a troublemaker, even though I wasn't – it's not like I was a bad person. I needed an outlet. And so I was uncontrollable because I suffered from anxiety, plus needed an outlet. You're going to cause trouble. Yeah. And a lot of people like me have had the same story. And my mom actually – got in trouble when she was a little kid, so she understood how to work with me and work with the teachers. But my mom handed my first book to my kindergarten teacher, and she cried because she knew me as always getting in trouble. And when you know someone is always getting in trouble, it's hard for you to foresee them becoming a success in however you would want to define it.
Yeah.
And so that's a powerful moment. Sometimes I tell people that too because it puts things in perspective of where I was and where I've come from.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So what the feeling, the emotional feeling of giving your grandfather a copy of that book, knowing that your first grade teacher had a copy of the book, what is that feeling?
I think it serves as a reminder that anyone could become anything, and that you shouldn't just turn your head at someone if they've gotten in trouble or if they've done something wrong. You can always make something happen, make changes happen in your life. And the other thing I would say is that even though you might be doing something originally for yourself, there's a bigger picture in mind. There's other people who are impacted from it, directly or indirectly, and through people you knew, like a family member or a teacher or someone you maybe have never met before. And just to try and put that in perspective as best you can, that this might be meant for somebody, it could be yourself or someone else, but it has further implications and can impact people on an emotional level in a way that you might not have thought of. Like when my book became #1 in Japan, the first one, it was crazy for me. I had never been to Japan at that point. I didn't even understand the culture. I didn't know anything. I just knew that I always thought of Japan as a different universe. Right?
Yeah, right.
And then thanking the people buying the book at 2 a.m. on Twitter, it was just kind of bizarre. And then the other crazy experience when I was younger was when Promote Yourself came out and it was translated into Portuguese. I was one of 4 American authors to speak at a 100,000 person festival in Brazil, and my face was on a billboard, and it was just a weird moment for me because it was oh, okay, so I might have typed this in my bedroom, but it could be far-reaching. The message could be far-reaching, and it can impact more people than I could imagine. Yeah. So it's a responsibility. I think all leaders and everyone has a responsibility with what they're putting out there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. A couple more questions. I know we're running out of time, but so what is that? What is that trait? What is and I don't want to say it's grit, but what is that ability to be able to decide that, hey, I'm going to invest in myself? What is that? What do people, you talked about it at the beginning, you just hit on it just now, but what do people need to be able to stop and actually look inward and be selfish so that they can be selfless and put stuff out? It takes a lot to.
I've thought about this a lot. And the truth is, I think there's a light and a dark side to motivation.
Ooh, tell me more.
The dark side that people probably won't talk about as much is the need for validation or to prove people wrong. So I 100% had that in my 20s. And then there's the light side. It's realizing that you can take people on a journey with you, that you can support them and make a positive impact on others' lives. Yeah. So I think that if you just have the positive, it's not going to take you far enough. I think you need to draw some of the energy from the negative, but at some point, release it.
Yeah,
I think it's fine to start with some of the negative as long as it turns into a positive, and as long as what's being created from the negative is something that's serving others.
Yeah.
So I think everyone talks about the positive side of let's give back to society. But there's definitely something feeding them. The reason why they set on that path. Yeah. And for me, it's like if you're always getting bullied, if you're looking for validation because you never got it growing up, that would be something negative. But I translated that into something positive. Yeah. I translated all this energy and anxiety into something that fueled personal growth, which therefore is supported the people that I'm communicating with.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. All right, so book comes out November 13th. I literally have it on my calendar, November 13th.
Don't publish until the 13th.
I have it on my calendar, November 13th, but they can pre-order it now. I've already pre-ordered my copy, so I'm excited. Where do people find you? Again, if they Google your name, they're going to find you everywhere. But where do people find? How do they sign up for newsletters, whatever?
Yeah, danschawbel.com. That's SCHAWBEL. And that has all the research, the articles, points you into any direction that you could possibly want to go in terms of what I'm able to offer you. And then there's a Back to Human. You can buy it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble's, a bookstore. And then 5 Questions with Dan Schawbel on iTunes.
So good. The 5 Questions with Dan Schawbel is so good. And your guests have been killer.
Thank you.
Really, really great. All right, so thank you very much for coming on. I know you're unbelievably busy, and I'm so glad I was able to take the train up to come up here to New York. I definitely want to come back after the book is released. I want you to come back.
You should come up to the book release on November 19th.
Yes.
Or you should go to the 92Y. That's the Monday after Thanksgiving.
Yes.
That's going to be
amazing. I should do that. Yes, I'm going to do that. Okay, so last question. When you leave this earth, what do you want your contribution to have been? I'm all about contribution to the world. What is Dan's contribution to this world going to be?
It's a body of research and knowledge left behind to help people through the ages solve problems as they're coming. Nice. Wherever you are in your career, there'll be a resource or a stat to help you figure your situation out, because I've already done all the work through eventually 60 years. Yeah. And so I think that the body of work will be strong enough, and there'll be enough people in that community that have read it and benefited from it, that it will stand the test of time, and then people at different phases of their career will be able to grab a resource that motivates them and that helps them at that given time get to that next level, even if they're struggling.
Yeah. Awesome. I did say that was going to be the last question, but I just thought of one more. And I've never asked this question, but you talked about in the beginning when you came in, you're a huge reader. We talked about some books in common. What is one book besides yours, which obviously everybody's going to get, that you think that every human being should read? And I've never asked that question before, but I'm fascinated with your reading list.
Yeah, Now Discover Your Strengths by Marcus Buckingham. He actually wrote the foreword for Promote Yourself, but that book is powerful because I think a lot of culture focuses so much on weakness when the greatest growth opportunity is in your strengths.
Yeah, love it. All right, listen. So if you like this, if you know somebody that would benefit from this, make sure you share it, comment, like it, tweet it, do it, all that stuff. But if you do anything, make sure you go on and follow this guy. I guarantee you'll be better for it. Thank you very much, and have a great day, everyone.